じゃあ始めますか。はい、okay. So thank you so much for everybody who joined us today. So today we have Ed Acosta, and the title of this workshop is Building a Career One Step at a Time from LaGuardia to JET. So I'm gonna briefly introduce Ed, and the format is I introduced Ed and I ask him questions, and you have a chance to ask questions at the end. But if you have any questions during his presentation, feel free to ask question in chat, and I try to collect it and ask him at the end as well. Okay, and then if you want to interrupt him anytime, like interrupt us. So. Edward Agosto is a LaGuardia alumnus. He graduated from LaGuardia in 2017 in Japanese option. So he's like probably like second or third cohort of the graduate from LaGuardia in Japanese. So like other graduates, he went to Queens, and he, like other graduates, he double majored in the East Asian studies and linguistics. And then he was interested in applying for JET, and he thought that having like some teaching experience is useful. So that's why he came back to LaGuardia. Now, you know him as a language tutor, but that was his thinking behind. And congratulations to Ed. He was accepted to JET this year. And topic of today's conversation is his entire experience starting from LaGuardia until he achieved his dream to become a JET teacher in Japan. So, Ed, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Ed. I'm a former LaGuardia student. I took a, sorry, I'm really nervous. This is just how my JET interview started, actually. I also started blundering, but I am a former LaGuardia student. I majored in I was a Japanese option student. Um, I've been studying Japanese for several years. I've had the dream of teaching in Japan with the JET programs. Actually, like the reason I actually started, like the reason I went to like college was initially because I had the dream of like going to Japan and teaching English over there. And one of the prerequisites is pretty much a 4-year degree in anything. Like it could be art, it could be like teaching, it could be literally anything. So like it's one of like I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with myself. And then like this interest like of Japan was there for me. So then I was like, how can I get there? That'd be really cool to like go to Japan and spend a few years living there and maybe even like, do whatever I can do to live there and experience there. And teaching was one of those things. And like, I thought the idea of teaching sounded really fun. So I decided to, go back to school. So I went to LaGuardia for a few years and I transferred to QC to continue studying Japanese. And one of the things I studied at LaGuardia was like linguistics 101. I thought it was really fun, so I decided to also continue studying that while I was at QC. And then I graduated, and then now we're here, right? Yeah. Sorry, I'm sad.
No, no, that's
Yeah,
great. So
yeah,
it's interesting. You were already interested in teaching in Japan when you started here.
yeah. I was.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's the I didn't know about it. I thought that that was something came after.
Um,
Um, um. So why like like what kind of like so you were not interested in anime and the games like that's like typical interest like people start with.
no, that was like like the reason why it was specifically Japan was because I was interested in pop culture, right? Like pop culture was like a gateway to Japan. Like it was kind of like my like initial interest was like anime and music and video games. And then when I started then like I was like, what do I want to do with myself? I don't know. Like, what do I like? I like anime. I like video games. I like Japanese music. It'd be cool to like, like spend time living there, right? So then I went to LaGuardia, I started studying Japanese, and as I started studying, I think once you get to like the higher levels, like 102, 103, you start learning more about the traditional culture aspects, history, and I got more interested as I started, seeing those aspects of Japan as well. So my interest shifted from being pop culture heavy to wanting to know more about the historical and other aspects of Japan. Outside the pop culture is still something I'm interested in. I still love Japanese music and I still play a lot of video games, but the anime kind of went away a little bit. But now it's more, I want to learn about Japan. I want to see Japan. I want to experience Japan. And yeah.
Hmm,
Mm.
interesting. Um, I have a set of questions. I don't want to
Right.
digress like so I know you're prepared
Mhm.
a little bit too. Let's um uh, uh, it was like almost five years ago. But if you remember, how was it like to study Japanese? You know, I I believe you didn't know any Japanese when you started, and then
Uh,
you eventually finished 2 years here, and then additional years at Queens. How was your experience like?
so my initial when I went into LaGuardia 101, like Japanese 101 at LaGuardia, I spent the previous summer. I started fall 2015, and I spent that previous summer just studying hiragana and a bit of katakana because I want to have a bit of a foundation. So I studied the basic vocabulary and the basic, writing system, just because I wanted to make sure that, like, the idea of learning a foreign language, especially one such as Japanese or even Chinese or even Korean, where it's a completely different, writing system, completely different from, like, what we use in English. I thought it would be, useful to have a foundation. I didn't want to struggle. I didn't want to have any issues. So I came in with that minor knowledge of Japanese writing, and just basic vocabulary like Ohio and Konnichiwa. And then, and also, when you watch anime, you learn some of these phrases too. So I had like a very small set of like anime vocabulary, when I went into 101. But I had a lot of fun. And like, I thought the teachers I had were great. Progressively, I felt like they I feel and I feel like the teachers progressively got better. Like I had more and more fun with each teacher I had. So like, it was fun initially with 101. Then I got to 102, and I got the chance to take Ai Mizuguchi before she left. Before she went back to Japan, and then I had like Toyama Sensei and all these, and then Hirogose Timasha Sensei. I had all these wonderful professors, and I've loved all of them because they made learning Japanese so much fun. But they also kind of like increase like they the way they taught Japanese made it so fun to me that the idea, like, my interest in teaching became more like stronger, I guess, because I wanted to teach a foreign language. Because again, I already knew that I had that interest in going to Japan and teaching English, right? So I wanted to, if I were to get to, live my dream and teach in Japan, I want to be able to teach as well as they taught, like, as and make learning like language learning as fun as they made it for me. And I spent a lot of my time, like, because I also wanted to get better at the language. I wanted to like impress them and show how motivated I am as a student. I spent a lot of time at B206, like at the the language lab, with Takashi Sensei, who's currently, he was a tutor. He was my tutor. Now he's a teacher at LaGuardia, Japanese teacher at LaGuardia, and Yukari Sensei, who's also still at LaGuardia, tutoring. So I spent a lot of my free time just at the language lab, improving my Japanese, and also trying my best to impress my teachers, and also wanting to kind of incorporate, learn from them and incorporate that into whenever I get to teach. Yes.
How was it like studying Japanese after LaGuardia? Because I know I taught at Queens, so I kind of know like there's a huge difference in terms of like teaching styles and also students, right? Like some students have already knowledge of Japanese from their like many Chinese students are
Yeah.
taking classes like Queens, so kanji is like a kind of the easiest thing at Queens, while this is the biggest challenge at LaGuardia. That's one thing I'm aware of. Like, was there any like a major differences here and there?
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference. Like the biggest one is that I think I mentioned, like, at LaGuardia, I had really great professors, and I really wanted to impress them. I feel like I had a really good connection with them, and I still have a really great connection with a lot of my old professors at LaGuardia. But at QC, it was really hard to do that. I'm not sure if it's the difference between a 2-year school and a 4-year school is the fact that, like, typically the enrollment's usually larger at a 4-year school. Like, the classes are really big. Teachers have more students they meet with, so it's harder to grow a connection with, like, one, a teacher-student relationship. Compared to LaGuardia, it was very easy for me to, I guess, very early on, kind of establish that I'm a very motivated student. I want to stay connected with, and I want to impress this professor. And I think the professor acknowledges that at LaGuardia. Compared to QC, they didn't really acknowledge that. So it was really hard to um, grow connection with those professors, even those in my major. I don't have any connection with them at all currently. And that it was a little upsetting for me. But also in regards to Japanese language specifically, I felt like it was a little, and again, I'm not trying to sound egotistical whatsoever, but I excelled a lot in LaGuardia at learning Japanese. I was usually like, I aced my courses, right? But at QC, I went from an A student to a B student at Japanese, and it was really upsetting for me because I always tried my best to learn, but I felt like QC didn't have the resources. The language lab wasn't really existent as far as I'm aware. I heard about this mythical, language lab existing, but I've never seen it. I never heard anyone who talked like actually went there. So like I didn't have that same, I didn't have Takashi senpai or Yukari sensei to help me outside of class, and it was really hard to, get help from my teacher outside of class because again, they always seemed more busy and never really seemed as willing to um, like help students afterwards. And it was also just a bit of a like gap in between like end of like Genki 2 to whatever book they were doing. So when I got to QC, we started doing Tobita. Um, it's like the intermediate to advanced level Japanese. And it was like I felt really overwhelmed. There was so much kanji that I wasn't familiar with, and as Nagano Sensei mentioned, there were a lot of Chinese students who already had like pre-existing knowledge, and I feel like they were just like way above me. I tried my best to catch up as much as possible, but it was very difficult. So I still did well. I still did okay, but I didn't do as well as I wanted to, and it really felt frustrating to me. And I tried my best to improve more throughout like before I got to the next course, which is like I guess the equivalent of like 105 and 106. Before I got to 106, I tried my best to study as much as possible, but even then there was still a bit of a gap for me. So I improved a little bit between the 105 and the 106, but it was still very difficult. And yeah.
So it sounds like LaGuardia building networks is kind of like success, like key to success, like to and then also use as many resources as possible. What do you suggest? So if you have someone who are transferring to Queens and to continue Japanese, what kind of advice do you give to them?
Um, Try your best. Like even though I said it was really hard to get a connection with them, try your best. Well, once they connect with the LaGuardia professors, Nagano Sensei, Toyama Sensei, Flynn Sensei who's here. They're all wonderful people. And there's all the like Takashi Sensei is also still teaching. So like these are really wonderful professors. Wonderful professors. If you're going to QC, Takashi Sensei teaches at both LaGuardia and QC, so staying connected with them. Maybe ask Takashi Sensei for the favor of introducing you to Fujimoto Sensei, who's like the main Japanese director at QC. So maybe he can introduce you, try to go gain a relationship with her, and try your best to, I think relationships matter. These current ones you have at LaGuardia, but also the ones you make in the future. And I think they definitely help you out, and they'll help you out with whatever um you do in the future. Like for example, like later on we'll talk about it a little more, but like I did letters of recommendation, and the people who wrote mine were all current LaGuardia teachers. No one from QC, no one outside of I guess academic. So thankfully I had these connections. If not, it would have been really difficult for me to, I feel it would have been harder for me to get accepted into JET if I didn't have these connections with people from LaGuardia, these wonderful professors from LaGuardia. So definitely try your best to maintain these relationships, but also gain more, even if it's hard at 4 years. And that's yeah,
Yeah. Fujimoto, like she was my old
yeah,
colleague, and then she's not the easiest person to connect with, but she's like a nice person once you get to know. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Like
I agree with you.
um, mhm.
Uh,
Can I say one
so,
thing?
yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Because Takeshi Sensei, who's currently teaching at both LaGuardia and at QC,
Right.
he was my senpai, right? So he also he was her student, and he was able to gain a relationship with her, and obviously now he's teaching there, so obviously he made it successful. I feel like I didn't get to have her as a teacher, so like it was a little harder for me to grow a connection with her personally, but it's possible. You could gain a relationship that could lead to future working opportunities. Yeah.
So I'm gonna change the topic a little bit, and I wanna ask about your personal experience with studying Japanese or Japanese culture. What was the best time? Like, what was the best memory of like last 7 years or 7 to 8 years? What's the best moment you know that you have studying Japanese or East Asian studies?
I think it was my 103 and 104 class together at LaGuardia because I was lucky enough to have classmates who stuck with me from 101 up until 104. And it was like once you got to 103 and 104 is when it got really serious, and also like we learned more about the culture. Like I said, I had Kyoko Toyama Sensei and Hiroko Miyashita respectively for 103 and 104, and it's just the way those classes were structured were so different compared to I feel like the way things are a little now, but also because it's pre-pandemic, right? There was a lot of differences, but it was just so fun having a group of friends who are as passionate as you are, and that you kind of you feel motivated in class to impress your professors, and also like motivated outside of class to like continue working with them together, and also working with the language tutors. To me, that was such a fun time, and I feel like I didn't take it for granted, but looking back, I really missed that because I feel like I was most motivated at that final my final year at LaGuardia. I was most motivated to improve my Japanese ability because I had these wonderful people around me that made it so much fun to learn Japanese. And yeah,
Did you hang out like after school? Where did you
we
go?
really
Like
um I mean, we went to like we did a lot of things together. We would go to the movies, we go to karaoke often. It was something
oh,
actually we did every like during birthdays or like at the end of the semester we'd celebrate by going to like karaoke and celebrating and trying our best to sing in Japanese, even though none of us were really that great at the time, and we just a lot of like muttering Japanese like characters, but not able to actually sing to the speed of Japanese. But it was still a lot of fun, and we were just I don't know, it was just like it was like it felt like the college experience, I felt like, instead of like the parties or whatever, it was just more of hanging out with really great people, and I made a lot of great friends that I still have really great relationships with currently. Yeah.
that
That was my funnest
that
time
was all
studying.
like from same class, like
Yeah.
not. I see, I see. Okay, so I asked the best time. The next question is obviously the worst time. So what was like the most challenging time you remember?
Definitely going to QC and feeling like I wasn't again, without trying to sound egotistical, feeling like I was a really great student who had my teachers, who I felt like my teachers really valued me high, like looked at me highly as a student, and I wanted to impress them, even though I wasn't their student anymore when I got to QC, and I wanted to tell them, like, if I ever go back to LaGuardia, say, hey, like I continued succeeding, I continued being a top student, and feeling like I couldn't do that once I got to QC because I realized like there was a bit of a gap for me, and I felt really frustrated, right? Definitely like trying to that 305, like 105, 106 equivalent at QC felt really stressful for me because I went from that the 1 year of having so much fun and having these great connections and also being a really good student to kind of struggling to keep pace with my classmates and not able to grow a connection with my teacher, but also not because I just transferred here. I didn't know any of my classmates, so like not having that same connection. I feel like if I was at least friends with them, or had a relationship with some of them, or some of my friends, if they came with me, I think I would have done way better. A little because then we'd practice outside before and after class, and I think that would be fun. But I didn't have any of that, and that made it really difficult for me. So that first year at QC, specifically with Japanese language learning, was really not as fun for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably not only with QC and then or not
Mm,
only with the
yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
major. Like many students say share the same, more or less the same
yeah,
kind of experience. Um, yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's change the topic again. You're accepted JET, and I believe many people are not aware of JET, which is actually many very popular career choice for students in East Asian studies and Japanese. Could you talk like basic facts about the JET program?
yeah. So the JET program stands for the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, or English. Wait, yeah, exchange and teaching. It's an exchange and teaching program where you pretty much you can stay up to a minimum of 1 year, up to a maximum of 5 years, teaching English but not you're not necessarily teaching. You're more of a assistant language teacher. So pretty much what that means is that if you get accepted to the JET program, or you start a career at the JET program, you will pretty much work at a school with a typically like a native Japanese teacher who's teaching English, and you're pretty much just helping them around. You're pretty much maybe making some minor lesson plans like about cultural aspects, and but also maybe like if there's like a insert from a passage, maybe you'd be reading that. So like it's mainly like it's pretty much, yeah, it's an assistant teaching job that you'd be doing. Like the way it works is that you pretty much when you apply, like and you get accepted, they kind of like you get a few choices of what your preferences are, right? Like you get to say like I want to live in a rural area or I want to live in an urban area, and I'd like to live here, here, and here. But it might not be any of that. It could be completely opposite from what you really want, which is a little unfortunate, but it's also the reality because there's so many people applying with you. So you can go anywhere from like Okinawa up into like the most northern part, Hokkaido, and yeah, like I'm probably rambling a little bit, but yeah, it's like it's pretty much an English assistant language teaching job where you can literally go and live anywhere in Japan. And yeah,
Do you know or do you mind sharing like salary and benefits? Like how much are you gonna? I mean, first of all, Japanese price index is like almost half of the US now. So you have to keep in that consideration. But how much do you think you're gonna make as a jet teacher?
Um, if we look at the standard like conversion, right? Not the current conversion, because right now it's not the greatest, but like it's about the 1 month salary is like equivalent to like 2,500 a month. Which sounds like maybe sounds a little bit to some people, but when you consider the fact that Japanese rent isn't that expensive, especially depending on where you live, right? So like if you live somewhere like in like a town, you probably pay $200 a month for rent, and then you have to pay other expenses like water, gas, and heating, maybe an extra couple hundred. So it sounds like you won't make much, but you probably and also like groceries you have to pay for as well. But you probably be able to save maybe up to 1,000 a month, depending on where you are. If you're in Tokyo, it's probably maybe 800 a month of rent plus other expenses. So it's more difficult, I guess, to accumulate, save money. But typically, it's enough to no matter. I think no matter where you are, you're probably going to be able to make enough to pay your bills and also have money to eat and also have money to save to hopefully travel during your holidays. So yeah, but typically 2,500 is like to start. But I think every year you get an extra like a $500 added to that. Not five, like yeah, about extra $500 added per month. I think like so like not per month, but so yearly. It's just first year 2,500, maybe second year 3,000, next year a little more. Yeah,
Is there a bonus? No bonus.
I don't think there's any bonuses, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, you might want to double check. I remember hearing
Mm,
uh maybe not. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Um yeah, the bonus is like you like in the mid-year and the year-end, Japanese salaryman get like a 2 month worth of
mm.
salary as extra pay. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm
so
not sure. Yeah.
double check. Like I don't know if they continue. Like it existed before for
Mm,
sure. My wife was jet teacher
mm,
too. Um, and many people, I think Robin Kaczynski, who teaches Japanese history, like what she was also jet. So many people who specialize in Japanese as a scholars or in the different fields usually started with the jet program.
mm.
Uh, um, there was a question: how long is the program?
So the program typically it's like it works as like a yearly contract kind of thing. So once you get accepted, you'll have like officially 1 year. So you'll typically like at the normal calendar year would be from I think late August up until the end of the following July. And every October, I think around October, sometime around the fall, you'll get contacted by the Board of Education in that specific prefecture that you're living in, whether or not you want to do another year, commit to another year in the program. So typically it's a max of 5 years, but I've heard of cases where people have done six. So yearly contract with the maximum of 6 years you can do. 5, 6 years you can do.
Yeah. I heard it used to be only up to 2 years, but
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
so many
Mm,
people wanted to stay longer. That's why they decided to extend to five
cool.
years. And by the fifth year, usually you have enough network to start
Yeah,
apply new job, and
yeah,
so it's actually a good time. Not many people want to stay more than 5 years.
yeah.
Um, Also, I don't know. I mean, you might know much better. In the past, JET is like it's a job, but it's not really a job because you're assistant teacher, so you don't need to prep a lot. You have a lots of time to explore Japan and then make friends. And JET has a very strong connection to each other. So
Mm,
uh, I heard it's a bit like job itself is not as demanding as like other kind of job. So you have
yeah.
lots of time to uh, do different things in Japan. Do you have to? Yeah, so that's the next question. So, what do you want to do? What do you have to do if someone wants to apply for JET?
Okay, so the whole process is like around October, the applications begin, right? So probably this October, you'll see like the app you if you stay connected to like the JET um website, the JET program website, you'll see that October like we'll start the whole application process begins. And then like you do this whole application of you have to write like a statement of purpose, why you want to why you're interested in teaching in Japan or why you're interested in working with the JET program. And you have other things you have to do, like your demographic. You have to collect letters of recommendations from two people. Um, it's just What else? You have to like do like a medical form. You have to like report fill a medical form. There's like several. There's like it's like a standard application that you'd probably think of, but there's a little more detailed, I guess, because it's not just you're not. It's a job outside. It's a job where you're required to get like a visa to work abroad, right? So it's a little more detailed than the standard application, I feel like, but it's still. I think it requires the same amount of work that you would take like applying for a part-time job that has like 20, 20 redundant pages you have to do over and over again, like doing those, you know what I mean? Like the question of answers, and you have to like constantly. It takes about maybe like a couple. It takes a few hours, maybe like more, depending on how detailed you want to be and how much time you want to spend writing your letter, your statement of purpose, which should take a lot of time, but maybe some people can do it really quickly. Um, what else? Then afterwards, you pretty much submit the application by the middle of November, and then around January or early February, you get notified of whether or not your application got accepted. Once your application gets accepted, if you get rejected, then it's over, right? But if you get accepted, um, in a few, maybe sometime around mid to late February, you will do an interview. For me, it was an online, and it was a Zoom interview. And then after that, it's about a 20 to 25-minute interview. And then afterwards, like you don't hear anything. You pretty much you leave the call, and then you go silent again. You don't hear anything from Jet again up until the middle of April or late April, which is when I got notified. So I got notified, I think like April 25th or something. Uh, and then I got accepted, right? So like I got accepted, and then I have to fill up other forms like a another physical, this time not for me but also for my doctor, to make sure that I have the physical and mental health needed in order to work abroad. Um, the mental health specifically because it could be a very demanding job, right? You're not just like people experience culture shock. It could be really difficult for even though it's not as stressful as like a maybe a full-time teacher or like an actual main teacher, but it's still you're living in a different place. It could be you can experience a lot of different emotions and feelings. You're also leaving your family, your friends, so it could be difficult for some people. So it's really important that you have, I guess, the mental health required in order to, I guess, perform your job. Um, and then you also have to fill out I'm trying to remember like a couple other forms. They're not that bad. You also do a FBI background check, which sounds overwhelming, but it's honestly really, really easy. Um, and now, though I finished all of that immediately, like I think maybe the first week of May. It's been not the first week of May, the first week of April. Excuse. I got accepted at the end of April, of March. I'm kind of getting confused with time. I'm really sorry. So now I'm kind of messing. Yeah, I got accepted at the end of March. I finished the whole application process, the second part of the application, or I finished the I got accepted phase of the application, maybe early April, and now we're at the middle of May, and I still don't know where I'm gonna go. I'll probably find out soon, but that's pretty much the last thing. Once I find out where I'm gonna go, like towards the end of May or early June, I'll pretty much have to do like just the visa application, and then I'm pretty much done. And then by July 29th, I'll be, heading to Tokyo for orientation, and then going to whatever prefecture they send me to. But as of right now, I have no idea where I'm going. It's a very long process, and there's a lot of waiting, which can be a little stressful and like really anxiety inducing. But yeah, this is where I am now. I'm a little stressed because I really want to know where I'm going. Even though I'm open-minded, I don't care. I'm excited, but I also really want to know where I'm going.
What kind of interview was it? Like, what kind of questions were you asked?
So like it starts off with like the typical why jet why do you want to teach why do you want to be assistant language teacher in Japan, and I initially botched that question where I got really overwhelmed just like I started this same thing. I kind of got really nervous and I messed up and I couldn't like I lost my I get really anxious when it comes to this kind of stuff where I'm getting interviewed or anything. I want to try my best to be answer to the best of my ability, but even then, like because my mind gets really overwhelmed, I sometimes mess up a little bit. But I immediately caught myself like after maybe like 30 seconds of freaking like panicking internally, and I said I'm really sorry. I'm honestly really nervous. I'm gonna try my best to start again. So I restarted. I collected my thoughts again. I started the interview and I kind of continued carried on. The interview questions were pretty much yeah like what the standard questions you'd hear, just like why us. What do you want to do if you get to what do you want to do for your community when you're in Japan? And by that they mean like again, you're there not just to teach, but you're also there to, you know, I guess be an ambassador for your specific country, right? There are people all over the world, people from the Philippines, UK, Australia, Canada, whatever, right? So you want to, for me, right, as someone who's from New York and America, New York, right? I should try my best to like show, I guess, that whatever town I'm living in, a part of New York. I represent New York. I should show them this is what we do in New York. This is, if anyone's interested, try their best to like introduce my culture and my world and my way of thinking to people in Japan to show them a different perspective. Um, and so that was one of the questions. Another question, sometimes they actually really like difficult questions. Like I think during the pandemic, they were asked because there was like sometimes a little controversial, right? Like during the pandemic, there are people who didn't want to get vaccinated, people who who are for vaccinations, right? So like I know during the pandemic, there were questions such as like, would you get vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? Which might stir up some kind of reaction. Um, some questions as in like some people don't enjoy the like being an ALT because for being an ALT, you're an assistant language teacher, right? So you do whatever you pretty much help the main Japanese teacher as much as you can. But some people just kind of sit there in the classroom and only talk whenever like the jet teacher tells them or the Japanese teacher tells them, okay, can you read this insert, right? So you're just like reading whatever you're just reading. That's all you're just pretty much like a speaker in a sense, or like a radio where you're just kind of reading off a textbook and that's it. And you're just kind of going back and sitting in the corner or whatever. Or maybe sometimes you just do the ABCs and you have to do A, B, C, over and over again. And that's literally all you do. Some people might not enjoy that. So like they kind of ask you about that to see like how you react. Are you willing to do that? If that's what your teacher tells you to do, are you willing to do it? And you have to be open-minded and say you are willing to do it because like that's kind of it's a possibility that it might happen, right? Every experience is different for everyone. So they kind of they might ask you questions to see how you'd react to maybe a negative thing or a controversial thing, just to see if you're willing to, you're open-minded enough to deal with whatever situation comes to you. And like the last part of the interview is like a small Japanese interview where it's okay if you don't know, you do not need to know any Japanese. I know a lot of people here currently do know Japanese, but you do not need to know any Japanese. But it's just, I guess, so maybe it does help with your placement. Maybe if you have a bit of a Japanese ability, they would maybe send you somewhere where you may not have as much access to fellow English speakers, which might be difficult for people who don't know any Japanese at all. So, but the Japanese interview is very, very simple, and it just kind of it starts off with like kino wa nani o shimashita ka? Like, what did you do yesterday, right? Up into something more like it gets progressively more and more difficult. Um, and like for me, I did well with the first four questions. The last question, I had no idea what they said. And honestly, I told them I'm sorry. And I've been studying for several years, right? And it's okay to not know. I think it's good to be honest and immediately say that you don't know, rather than like say, oh, try your best to answer, even though you don't know what they talk. You don't know what they're asking about. You know what you're talking about. So I was just very honest, and for the last one, I was like, I don't know, and yeah, that's yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my wife's time was like that. Like there are lots of horror stories and she shared like her experience too. She spoke Japanese very well already that time, so she was assigned to inaka, very inaka, like where you see all the paddy fields and yeah. Anyhow, so I know that I think it's okay because you already accepted. This wasn't your first time trying, right?
No, this was my first time. I didn't do it before. I didn't feel like I was ready. I think you mentioned it earlier during like the introduction sequence, like part where you said that like I wanted to get this experience as teaching as like a language tutor to help me kind of. I wanted this experience. You don't need the experience of
Oh,
teaching,
so
but I wanted it.
this is the first time that you got accepted right away.
My
Ah,
yeah, which is
awesome.
incredible. I was not expecting to get accepted. I honestly didn't
Awesome.
think it was gonna happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
many people actually applied like multiple times, so I thought you did too.
yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is actually if you I just want to ask the floor if anyone have questions so far before we move on. No one? No one has questions?
Just one. I wanted to show.
Yeah, go
Because I
ahead.
wrote this earlier. I'm not sure if you can see it. Oh, it's gonna be blurry. Whatever. I wrote like this acronym ESID, which just stands for every situation is different. And if whenever you start applying to the JET program and you look at Reddit or you look at YouTube videos, people who are on the JET program or who want to apply for the JET program, you'll see this all over the place. And it's pretty much like every situation is going to be different for like who is the person you're talking, who's talking, right? So like you might Nick Nagana-sensei's wife maybe didn't have like the most ideal experience, or maybe it wasn't the experience that she wanted to have, but maybe there's gonna be someone who's in a the same exact location, maybe the same school who might love it, right? So it depends on who you're talking to. It depends on like the placement where you if you get your ideal location, or maybe you fall in love with your location, or maybe like um if you have like wonderful teachers you're working with, and maybe you have like a wonderful community of fellow Jets or maybe Japanese people who befriend you, you might love the experience. But there are gonna be people who don't like the experience either. So like you'll see this the acronym a lot. So just be aware of that, right? So I might you might if you guys stay in contact with me, I might tell you I love it, or maybe I'll hate it. But if it doesn't mean you should not try, right? Because you might actually really love the experience. So yeah, I want to add that as well.
That's true. Uh, any advice, someone who is finishing on LaGuardia, like if they are interested in jet, what do
All
you
right.
advise?
Stay connected with all professors. Like right now, I believe Fun Sensei's here, Nagano Sensei, obviously, Toyama Sensei, Taki Sensei, etc. Like stay connected with all your professors, even professors outside of Japanese program. If there's professors you have really in the English department or whatever, wherever, stay connected with them. It's important. You never know when you're going to need a letter of recommendation from someone. So having, a teacher who knows you're the student, knows that you're a really good student, they really want to, they're more likely to write a really good letter of recommendation for you. And I'm pretty sure, and part of the reason why I got accepted is because maybe Nagano Sensei and Toyama Kyoko Sensei wrote a really great letter for me. Um, so like definitely stay connected with those professors. Just do your best. I don't think your like whatever your GPA matters that much. They do see your GPA because you have to send a transcript, but I don't think it's like I'm not sure what your grades are or whatever. But I don't think it's like the end of the world. Definitely just try your best. Do your best in your classes, and whenever you transfer to the next school, like continue doing your best. Continue trying to gain relationships with people. Whenever there's events, like this one, or like from people who are actually currently doing the JET program, right? Or past people who did it in the past, right? Attend them, gain experiences. I think it's important to look up like Reddit, like Reddit for like any online forums that are related to get different experiences. 'Cause I think it's really interesting for me. I did a lot of research on people who did JET program in the past or currently doing it because I wanted to see like even though I know every situation is going to be different, I'm still interested in hearing their perspective, right? Um, what else? Like, yeah, and just try and if you apply and if you were to get rejected, try again. If you really want to experience Japan, try. And there are other programs too. It's not just the JET program. There are a lot of different programs that do a similar thing. JET's just like it's a really great one, but there are other programs that do a lot that do a very similar thing, and you could still experience Japan. So yeah, I think I
Yeah.
yeah.
I just want to acknowledge Kak Sensei is started like LaGuardia this semester. She's in the audience, so she's also a good person to know too.
She's great.
Um,
I'm not sure if hopefully she's okay with me mentioning it, but she did tell me her husband was a jet, a former
oh,
jet.
I didn't know.
So yeah, she told me that.
こんにちは。
Thank you. Hi,
I
hi.
just found out Nagano sensei's wife too, but my husband too. But yeah, very long time ago, about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
More than 20 years ago.
Mm.
So I was telling, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I share a little bit of my husband? What he told me was socialization was the biggest challenge for him. Like the job itself was very fun and rewarding. But once, you're not working at the school, like on the weekend or at weeknight, he felt very lonely because when you are placed in a rural area of Japan, there are not a lot of people who are same age as you. So you don't really know, where you can go out for hanging out and stuff like that. So it was hard for him the first 2 years. But after he left the JET to go to more urban area of Kansai, Osaka, he was placed in Hyogo Prefecture, the Inaka first, the rural area. And then he transferred himself to the Osaka, which is more urban area. He was able to make a lot of friends who are similar. He had very good life there. So JET can be your initial step to, connect yourself with Japanese society. So I'm very much looking forward to find out where Edo-san is going. And yeah, socialization is also important aspect of your JET program life. So I'm sorry
my wife's time is the same thing. Like there was no internet. Like
that's even worse.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
smart, no
things,
iPhones back then.
things
Yes,
might have changed a lot like since then, but still
that's true.
probably
Yeah.
the same issue. I want to talk about the connecting with the professors. Like we love to write letters, right? Like no one gets very upset by being asked to write letters. Usually, they actually feel flattered. Like these students asked me to write letters. Yay! The problem is sometimes we don't know enough about you to write the letters, and then what happens is we just write a very generic like this student's great, great, great. But we like those people who select candidates with 100 of letters, so they can tell which one is like more real letters. Like all letters sounds great, but they can tell which one is a more authentic recommendation or something that you can write without knowing the candidate. So that's why it's important to get connected. Just share updates. Like someone asked how to get um, how to connect it if you are graduated. Just send updates. I just got an email from someone who graduated even before Edison this morning, for example, just saying that I got a new job. Yeah, we don't expect to report to us like every single step of your career, but that helps for us just in case to write something for you.
Yeah, to add on that, I remember before, actually prior, I didn't apply to JET, but there was another program I applied to right before the pandemic, and it fell through sadly because of the pandemic. But there was another company, honestly not a great company, but it was like I missed out on the initial window to apply for JET that year. I think it was the end of 2019, and then I applied for some other company that honestly it didn't have the greatest reviews, but at the same time, I was also really desperate to like do something right after I graduated. And then I messaged Nagano Sensei and I asked Nagano Sensei to possibly be a reference for me. But then the application process was going well, but then like around I think I want to say March of 2020, like that's when Japan kind of closed off and that the whole talks fell through. Thankfully, it did because honestly, I don't think I would have enjoyed that opportunity because it wasn't really teaching. It was more of like English daycare kind of thing, which I don't think would have been fun. And again, really negative reviews, very high turnover for that specific company. But at the same time, like I said, there are other opportunities you could do. Maybe I could have enjoyed it. I don't know. But it ended up falling through. But then afterwards, I don't think I really spoke with Nagano Sensei much until last year when I got accepted to tutor at LaGuardia. So I felt really terrible about it, honestly, because I wanted to stay connected and I knew I should have stayed connected, but honestly, I'm not the greatest at staying connected. Like if you know me, I feel like when I write an email, it's very long and thorough, but I'm not someone who can really initiate emails. I'm not really great at like I'm not the greatest at like initiating conversations or like kind of responding, but when I do respond, typically it's very thorough and maybe too long and I kind of ramble on a little bit just like when I talk, but I'm just not the greatest at that, and I felt really terrible because Nagano Sensei was always really wonderful to me, and I felt guilty for not staying connected. But like Nagano Sensei just mentioned, just try your best whenever you can, just to say, hey, like how are you? I'm doing great. I'm doing this, by the way. Like my Japanese classes are going well at this college, or like I just graduated from this college. How have you been, Nagano Sensei or Fun Sensei, right? And just try your best to stay connected with these really great professors and your future professors as well, and just update them whenever you can. If you have a really good relationship with them, don't lose that because again, it might come back and help you later on with whatever you decide to do.
Is there any other questions from the floor? If there isn't, I just gonna ask like a last advice. Oh, there you go. If you could, okay.
100%.
Linguistics. Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about linguistics a little bit?
100%. I love linguistics. Linguistics is like for anyone who doesn't know, it's just like the study of language. It's like I feel like it's so helpful, especially like I have students right now in 102, right? And like they sometimes, and again, I understand why, because I had the same issue, right? When I started learning Japanese, and like it's gonna sound a little silly, right? Because I'm a native English speaker, but in it for English speakers, we learn English by reading books, right? We learn English by just hearing people talk. We don't learn like the linguistical properties of like, you know, English uses like a what is it again? Like a SVO like structure or whatever, right? Like subject, verb, object or whatever. I eat apple, right? I eat an apple. But like we don't learn that that's SVO, right? We just know it. Um it's like innate in us, right? It's something we know just by living in this specific culture, right? But if maybe if you learn English outside of like America or like maybe another foreign if you have a foreign language background, a foreign culture, and you learn English there, maybe you learn like you learn about nouns, adjectives, and whatever. But I feel like you don't really learn that here. Which is a bit of a shame. But when I first started studying Japanese, it was a little confusing. Like I didn't like okay, what's the adjective? Like it was a little confusing understanding the grasp of adjectives and non-adjectives and nouns and all these other components. I never thought about that in English. I just know it because I know it. And I can speak because I can speak, not because I know like, okay, this is if this two words are together, this is a compound noun, or no, this is an adjective describing this noun or whatever. Like I didn't think about that. So I have students now who are having the same issue where they're telling me like they don't understand like I'm telling them, okay, they say the word like oishi, right? And I'm like, okay, is it oishi des or oishimasu, right? And they're confused, like, I don't know, like, because they don't know that. And I'm like, no, mas is, remember, mas is verb ending. And they're so confused because they don't understand that, like, they don't get the linguistical property of it. And I feel like when I took when I took linguistics 101 and I kind of got the foundation for that, it made learning Japanese so much more easier for me because like, oh, now I understand. Now I understand like why I didn't get it before. And now, and again, I told my students literally a few days ago, like I get what you guys are having trouble because I had the same thing. So if you guys get the chance, definitely take linguistics, get a foundation of like the way English works. I think it makes learning other languages easier, or even if it's not just English, it could be whatever your native language is, and learn the way that works. I think learning another language would be way more easier. And I love linguistics so much. It was so much fun just learn. And again, I think it made my Japanese language learning easier, but it also I think when I begin teaching as an assistant teacher, I think it would make um, teaching English easier because I have a better understanding of it now than I did before learning linguistics. So I think it's very, very helpful. I think it's very important. And even if you can't minor in it, definitely just take some classes if you can. If your major allows for some outside courses to fit in some areas, definitely try your best to fit in some linguistic courses because it's so fun. And at QC, I loved the linguistics department at QC. It was so much fun. And my favorite professors were actually my linguistic professors. No offense to anyone in the other departments, but linguistics was so much fun at QC. Sorry.
We got the two more questions about
Yep.
the JET process, about the visa process, and also what do you think if someone is engineering degree?
Okay. So for the visa process, I haven't started it yet. Pretty much like you can't start the process until you get your work ID, which is something you won't get your work ID until you get your location, right? So hopefully within the next week or two, like I'll get my placement notification, and with that will come my the work ID required in order for me to begin filling out the visa process. But from what I heard, like the visa process is very simple. Like it's mainly on the consulates, the New York consulate of Japan side, where like they would I would contact them, I would either email them or not email them, I would either mail them or physically hand in my what's it called, my passport to them, and then they will just kind of take that and fill out, do the documents on their side. But I just have to fill out a form, give them give them my passport, and then they just kind of do everything. And then before I leave Japan, they'll give everything back to me. And yeah, it's the visa process isn't that difficult from what I've read.
What about, do you recommend JET to someone who didn't major in Japanese?
Yes. So I think engineering is actually great because there are a lot of, let's say you like Flynn Sensei mentioned with her husband, right? Like that could be a really good like step what's it called again? Like a not a gateway, like a stepping stone to a career in Japan, right? And right now, like I think engineering is actually one of like the best jobs to do in Japan. One of the easiest jobs for like foreigners to get, but you won't be able to get that without a working visa, right? So JET program will give you a working visa, and with that working visa, you can look for other opportunities that can continue sponsoring your visa, right? So you go to Japan to teach in as an AOT. Maybe you like it, maybe you love it, and you can like it might be something that's really interesting for you and something you can probably fall in love with. So maybe you want to continue you'd want to continue teaching English, maybe in Japan or somewhere else, right? Maybe you realize, I don't really like this. Actually, I want to do something with engineering. I studied engineering. I really love engineering. And then you say, hey, okay, let me use my working visa my sponsored working visa to look for other opportunities. Because it's really easy to find other jobs in Japan while you're in Japan with a working visa. It's really hard to do that outside of Japan because you don't have anyone. Because it's really people aren't willing to sponsor you unless you already have a pre-sponsored, I guess, visa. So like using this opportunity you can get with JET or another um, English, what is it, ALT like position program. Like if you get accepted to one of those, it's you get the working visa, and with that you can kind of like look for other opportunities. You can like branch out to something else. So like again, it doesn't matter what you major in; it could be anything. Like I just majored in Japanese because I really want to continue learning about Japan and Japanese language. But initially, I was going to major in English, right? Because I liked I like writing a lot. I'm not the greatest at it, but I really enjoy writing and like thinking, but it could be linguistics, science, math, it doesn't matter. I think no matter what your major is, if you have an interest in Japan and like you want to experience life in Japan, like Naima Sensei mentioned earlier too, like, you can use that free time to like travel around and experience other sides, experience Japan and learn about Japan. And if you don't like it, then when you come back, you can like find a career over here with your engineering degree, right? Or like I said, if you like Japan, you want to continue studying, you want to continue living there, use that connection, gain connections and other engineers in Japan, and try to find a job with that specific field in Japan.
As far as I heard about JET, it's like they usually set the salary just high enough so that you can save some money after working several years so that you can continue your career. As many people choose to come back to school, so they spend like the amount of money they save for the graduate school. That's kind of typical path for JET JET alumni. Anyhow, so it's almost the time, and I think it's a good time to ask your final advice to our fellow LaGuardia students.
Okay. So something I think is really important during like the application process is when you're writing your when you're writing your statement of purpose, your main letter explaining why you want to teach and live in Japan. I think it's important to, be you, show who you are, right? I think that's what they're more interested in. They're not really interested in technical stuff. Like, I know people who applied and they're overqualified, but they still don't get accepted because they're not really like, I feel like they have a specific type they're looking for. I think they want to see personality. They want to learn about who you are and why who you are works in Japan, right? Why who you are would be, someone that people in Japan can learn from, and show that whenever you go back to your home country, right, that you can pretty much bring a part of Japan back with you, right? Because again, it's a culture exchange program, right? That's what it is at its core. It's a culture exchange program. So you have to, be willing to show your culture, but also bring back, teach, like for me, right? Like come back to New York and teach what I learned from Japan, teach Japan culture, right? In some way, shape, or form, or whatever. Another thing, when you're writing your letter, your statement of purpose, definitely have a lot of people look at it. I had a lot of friends who were really willing to help me, and like it's like a 2-page essay, right? So it's not that overwhelming, but even then, like you want to make sure it's perfect, right? And you want to make sure that it shows who you are as a person, and make sure that I guess if your friends are bored reading it, it's probably not a good letter, right? You want to make sure that like it's interesting to the reader, right? You want to make sure that people, it really shows who who you are at your core, and people like reading it. Maybe there's other grammatical mistakes your friends maybe you miss, but your friends could notice for you. So have a lot of people read it if you can. Like I had 3 friends who read through my essay twice, and they always gave me really good feedback. Sometimes some of it I didn't agree with, some of it I did agree with, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't notice this mistake, or maybe like you're right, I could word it this way and it's more interesting, or maybe I didn't connect. I said something here but didn't really connect. As I didn't connect it as well as I thought I did. So having a friend give me peer peer reviewing for me definitely helped a lot. Another thing when you're writing your letter, again, I'm focused on the letter because I think that's like the big thing, because before they even meet you, right? That's the first thing they see, right? So they read your application like, okay, you look interesting, right? But your letters what really sells them. I think your letter is the most important component before the interview. So another thing when you're doing your letter is, again, like talk about you. So like this is me, right? And this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. I think that's really important. So pretty much tie it together, right? So talk about something related to you, and then like say this is what I want to do this is what I want to do, and explain how you're going to do it based on like, I guess, your person, who you are as a person, or based on your experience or something like that. I think that definitely is really important when you're writing your letter. What else can I say? Be honest, like be honest during your interview, right? Be honest during your application, be honest during your interview. I think that helped a lot. Like though I initially botched my opening sequence, right? I was so stressed out and I was like, oh my God, Lee, I'm so sorry. And I immediately said, I'm so sorry. I'm honestly really nervous. I'm gonna try my best. I'm like, I connected that several times where there were several like times where I kind of like rambled on, or I kind of like got choked up on my words, and I said, I'm sorry. Like again, like I said, I'm really nervous, but even then I want to try my best. I always try my best. I may not be the best at this or that, but I'm someone who's really determined to try to, um, become better as a person, become, like I'm capable. I believe I'm capable, and I want to prove that. So I kept like making connections to that. So every time like it was relevant, I kind of drew back to my initial like blunder, and I said, like again, I'm not. I may mess up sometimes, but I'm always determined to try my best. Even now, I'm really nervous, but I'm still trying my best to talk and try my best to express why I'm good enough for this opportunity. So be honest. Don't, you know, be you, and I think that's what they be you, and like and show why you are, you know, a great person. Pretty much prove, you know, just be you and prove why you're good and prove and because you are great. You're a great person and be confident in who you are as a person. And um, yeah, I'm kind of rambling a little bit too much again. I feel like
I think
sorry.
it's a great
Yeah,
set of
yeah,
advice. That's
yeah.
great. So yeah, let's give Ed the round of virtual applause. Thank you. So this is like the second time like we are doing this with Ed, but if you have any like other topics that you are interested, or of course I believe Ed is more than happy to share his experience privately if you're interested talking to him at the lab, because you work until six no, until June, right?
Yeah, I'll be yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So go to his tutoring or send an email. Oh, he
yeah,
shared the email.
yeah. That's my private, my personal email. I think I'll lose my LaGuardia email and like once
Yeah,
I yeah.
yeah.
So if you want to stay connected, definitely email. Again, like it could be, you know, people unrelated to, you know, your teachers. You could also talk to me, reach out to me whenever you want. You have any questions related to jet program or just like anyone who's experienced Japan. It could be like, hey, I'm going to Japan soon. Can you give me advice on places to go? I've been there a few times. I can give you advice. Definitely stay connected. Maybe we can meet up and like hang out and do something. Like I'm a little awkward, but even that I'm very honest and very open-minded, and I'm, you know, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me whenever, and I will try my best to answer to the best of my ability.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to see you on the next virtual events like this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Bye,
you so much.
everybody.
Bye.